The United Arab Emirates is a rich country, but it's also one of the most water-scarce in the world. To tackle this issue, the UAE plans to undertake an ambitious and crazy project, dragging an iceberg from Antarctica to the Arabian Gulf. Here's a look at one of the world's most ambitious megaprojects. The UAE is a Middle Eastern country located on the Arabian Peninsula. It consists of 7 emirates like Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and others. This country is one of the largest oil producers in the world, but despite its wealth, the UAE is one of the top 10 countries with the least amount of water. This is due to its extremely dry climate, which only receives less than 4 inches of rainfall per year. To overcome this water shortage, most of the fresh water they use comes from desalinating seawater. Additionally, water is also drawn from deep wells. Although the UAE has advanced technology to produce fresh water through desalination, this process is very expensive and requires high energy consumption, where 1 barrel of oil is used to process 3 barrels of water. Besides, the desalination process also has negative effects on the surrounding environment. The UAE is also known as a country that consumes more water than the global average, so this country faces the risk of severe drought over the next 25 years. To overcome this, the UAE has undertaken various efforts and projects. One of the projects they will work on is the ICEBERG project. The ICEBERG project was first proposed in 1975 in Saudi Arabia. At that time, a French scientist suggested a plan to Prince Mohammed bin Faisal Al Saud to pull an iceberg from Antarctica. In 1977, Prince Mohammed bin Faisal Al Saud collaborated with Iowa State University to bring a 1-ton iceberg from Alaska. The iceberg in Alaska was transported by plane, then transported by a refrigerated truck to Iowa State University in the United States. Prince Mohammed bin Faisal Al Saud explained, "If the iceberg can be used to produce clean water, then modify the weather and other applications." Prince Al Saud had high ambitions to solve the water problem in the Middle East. Prince Al Saud was also the brain behind the desalination technology to obtain clean water in Saudi Arabia. However, in the end, the ICEBERG project lacked support from the Saudi Arabian royal family and there were technical problems, so the ICEBERG project was stopped. Despite being stopped, in 1978, the United States stated that pulling an iceberg is a very difficult project, but it might be possible. And since then, the technique of pulling icebergs on a small scale has continued to be developed to this day. In addition to the United States, the concept of pulling icebergs also received support from Georges Mugan from France in 2011. For several decades, Georges Mugan has been studying icebergs at both poles, and he also collaborated with 3D model designers from the BASE system to test his hypothesis. In his hypothesis, by utilizing the power of ocean currents, the iceberg would only require a little pulling power, and this is the same as moving on a conveyor belt. In his test, Georges Mugan successfully moved a virtual iceberg weighing 7 million tons, using only one 130-ton tugboat. Then, after the death of Prince Mohammed bin Faisal Al Saud in 2017, the idea of this project was continued by a wealthy businessman from the UAE named Abdullah Al Sai in 2019. Like the previous iceberg project, Abdullah Al said plans to pull an iceberg in Antarctica to be brought to the Arabian Gulf. This iceberg project will pull a giant iceberg on Earth Island, near the South Pole, towards the Arabian Gulf. The distance from Heart Island to the Arabian Gulf is about 5,500 miles, and it's planned to take 10 months to reach the destination. During the 10-month journey, the iceberg will lose 30% of its mass before entering the warm waters of the Arabian Gulf. The iceberg is planned to be 1.2 miles by 0.3 miles, with a depth of 984 feet. To pull the iceberg, a metal belt will be used, which will then be pulled with a tugboat. When the iceberg arrives on the coast of Fujairah, the iceberg will be placed in a port that has clean water processing facilities. The technology for mining clean water on this giant iceberg does not require the consumption of fossil energy, chemicals, filters, and others, and can operate for 20 years. After being processed, the iceberg is estimated to be able to produce billions of gallons of water, thus meeting the clean water needs of 1 million UAE residents for the next 5 years. The iceberg will also attract local and foreign tourists, thus adding new income for the UAE from the tourism sector. According to Abdullah Al-Sahai, this iceberg project will be a solution for the UAE to overcome water shortages and can also replace about 15% of water processed by desalinating water. In addition, the iceberg project can also change the weather in the Arabian Gulf. The cold temperature of the iceberg will attract clouds to the Arabian Gulf, so it will be able to make rainfall in the area where the iceberg is located. From an environmental perspective, according to Abdullah Al-Sahai, this iceberg project also has minimal impact on the surrounding environment. And compared to the desalination process, this iceberg project is more environmentally friendly. Then, in processing the iceberg into clean water, the cost incurred is also cheaper compared to the desalination process. If this project is successful, it will be used in other water-scarce countries outside the UAE in the future.